Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm Bob Mendelsohn. Welcome to my sukkah. I'm not exactly sure what happened. I've been in the sukkah going live the last 3 days. This is day 4 of the Festival of Tabernacles. It's an 8-day holiday, and I was live. Somebody even greeted me and we chatted. I don't know where that recording went. So if it shows up, then I'll delete this one. If it doesn't show up, then we'll have this one. Maybe. I'm not sure. I'm somewhat technical, but I don't know that I'm as technological as I need to be. Let's get right into it. This is the 4th day of the holiday, of an 8-day holiday called Sukkot. It's the only 8-day holiday in the Bible for the Jewish people. And we'll talk about why it's not only for Jewish people. We'll talk about that over these next few days, but certainly today we'll comment on that. You're thinking, wait a minute, Hanukkah is an 8-day holiday. Right, that's probably because when they were fighting in the time of the Maccabees, they were not able to celebrate the Feast of Tabernacles. And so when they finally won the battle, we'll say around December of that year, 165 BCE, then they celebrated the Feast of Tabernacles a little late, but that'll count. That's why it's 8 days, not the magic of the oil lasting for 8 days. That whole story, it's a great fable, a wonderful fable, preaches well. Not sure it's even true, but there you go. Here's what I was thinking today. We're going to read Ecclesiastes, as we do every day while in the sukkah. Vanity, wind, under the sun. We're going to hear that a lot. We're going to hear the magpies and the mynah birds and the sound of traffic from Pacific Highway right over here. But I want you to hear this, because it takes place in 1 Kings chapter 8. This is when King Solomon, who wrote the book of Ecclesiastes, dedicated the temple in Jerusalem. We had a tabernacle, not like this necessarily, but we had, it was a tent, and inside was another tent, and inside that was the Holy of Holies and the Holy Place and all kinds of decorative furniture. And that's what Moses had built under Bezalel and Oholiab. So they built that tabernacle. It was a traveling Coleman tent, if you will, that they carried through the wilderness. And that's what we represent in this sukkah. That's what we're reminding ourselves about. And then King David really wanted to build a permanent place. Of course, permanent. He lived about 1000 BCE. His son Solomon, who wrote Ecclesiastes, built that temple to be a permanent place. Of course, then 586 BCE, the Babylonians came and destroyed it, destroyed Jerusalem, cast us out, exiled us. A pretty significant moment in Jewish and really global history. And then we rebuilt it, and that was pretty exciting. And then, of course, it was destroyed again in 70 CE under the Romans. So Babylonians and Romans destroyed it, but it was permanent. Yeah. At the time of the dedication of the temple, Solomon prayed a prayer. 1 Kings chapter 8, verse 12, Solomon said, "The Lord has said that he would dwell in the thick cloud. I have surely built you a lofty house, a place for your dwelling forever." Forever, it didn't work out so. And then he prays a really long prayer, and a good prayer. And if you like templates of model prayers, sample prayers, this is a good one. I encourage you to read that. Americans, 1 Kings 8. Everybody else on the planet, 1 Kings 8. All right, so then in verse 54, when Solomon had finished praying this entire prayer and supplication to the Lord, he arose from before the altar of the Lord, from kneeling on his hands with his hands spread toward heaven. Wow, that's a great position, isn't it? And he stood and blessed all the assembly of Israel with a loud voice, saying, now that's usually the job of the priest, but Solomon, who's a king, is not the priest. It's okay, it's good to bless people. Here's what he said in verse 56, "Blessed be the Lord, who has given rest to his people Israel, according to all that he's promised. Not one word has failed of all his good promise, which he promised through Moses." So 550 years earlier. "May the Lord our God be with us as he was with our fathers. May he not leave us or forsake us, that he may incline our hearts to himself." you get the idea that it's fairly in-house, that this is the God of Israel, that he's looking after Israel and all the Jewish people. Now this may be something that bothers you. It certainly bothered Kanye West on the weekend. Ye, as he's now officially called. That's a weird one. Anti-Semitism is certainly on the rise. Certainly people are hearing it, thinking it a lot more and more publicly than you and I should be comfortable with. But then get this. It says this, verse 60. Oh wait, verse 59. And may these words of mine with which I've made supplication before the Lord be near to the Lord our God, day and night, that he may maintain the cause of his servant and the cause of his people Israel, as each day requires. So you might be hearing this and thinking, oh my, this is all about Jews, and it's all about Jewish people, and Solomon is only thinking about himself. But get this, verse 60. So that all the peoples of the earth may know that the Lord is God. There's no one else. This is not about Israel and only Israel. God gave Israel the temple, the tabernacle, the law, his word, gave Israel, Jewish people, his information, not so that we could only maintain it and be proud of ourselves and say, we've got it, you don't, haha. No, so that all the peoples of the earth may know that the Lord is God. The purpose of God choosing Israel was not so that Israel could boast, but so that we could proclaim God's good news to the rest of the planet. That's how this is supposed to work. This tabernacle is, whoa, there's the wind, is really supposed to be for all peoples of the earth. And you want another example of that? In Leviticus, it tells us how many animals we're supposed to bring in sacrifice on this, during this festival. All kinds of bulls and just relentless offerings that we brought. On the first day we're to bring 13 bulls, and on the second day 12, and the third day 11. You get the progression. And on the last day we're bringing one. You add those up and you find 70 bulls are offered during the Feast of Tabernacles. What's that about? What that's about is that the people of the earth geographically in those days believed that there were 70 nations on the earth. So when God tells the Jewish people to sacrifice 70 bulls during the Feast of Tabernacles, he's saying, don't forget everybody else. In fact, let these offerings not be for Israel, let these be for the peoples of the earth. It's always been in God's heart that everybody, the whole globe should be included, all the nations of the earth. In fact, if I read it in Zechariah, we're going to get to Ecclesiastes 4. We really will read it. But I wanted you to hear Solomon's prayer, because that's the Solomon that you want to listen to more than his aching and sadness in Ecclesiastes. The Solomon who wanted all the world to hear it. The Solomon who wanted everybody to get in on the pleasure of God. We're going to talk about that more in the next couple days. We'll just leave it at that. Let me read to you Ecclesiastes chapter 4. Then I looked again at all the acts of oppression which were being done under the sun. Under the sun meaning in the natural, or in a world without God. That's probably the best way to say it. And behold, I saw the tears of the oppressed, and that they had no one to comfort them. And on the side of their oppressors was power, but they had no one to comfort. So I congratulated the dead who are already dead more than the living who are still living. But better off than both of them is the one who's never existed, who's never seen the evil activity that's done under the sun. Remember, without God in the plan. I've seen that every labor and every skill which is done is the result of rivalry between a man and his neighbor. This too is vanity and striving after wind. The fool folds his hands, consumes his own flesh. One handful of rest is better than 2 fists full of labor and striving after wind. He has declared over these last 3.5 chapters how miserable life is when all you do is pursue pleasure, or pursue money, or pursue bounty, or pursue knowledge and another academic degree. If that's all you want and leave God out of the picture, it's striving after wind. Verse 7, then I looked again at vanity under the sun. There was a certain man without a dependent, having neither a son nor a brother, yet there was no end to all his labor. Indeed, his eyes were not satisfied with riches, and he never asked, and for whom am I laboring and depriving myself of pleasure? This, too, is vanity, and it's a grievous task. You'll hear this next section, 9 through 12, read at a lot of weddings. Two are better than one because they have a good return for their labor. For if either of them falls, the one will lift up his companion. But woe to the one who falls when there is not another to lift him up. Furthermore, if two lie down together, they keep warm. But how can one be warm alone? And if one can overpower him who's alone, two can resist him. A cord of three is not quickly torn apart. Verse 13, a poor yet wise lad is better than an old and foolish king who no longer knows how to receive instruction. Is that himself or what? For he has come out of prison to become king, even though he was born poor in his kingdom. I've seen all the living under the sun throng to the side of the second lad who replaces him. There's no end to all the people, to all who were before them, and even the ones who will come later will not be happy with him. For this too is vanity and striving after wind. That's what it's about. That's what life without God is, vanity and blowing in the wind. And that's why we remember it on the Feast of Sukkot. During these days, if you get it right, that trivial pursuits are not what you're about. That gaining is all for what? But if you remember God in the days of your youth and the days of your aging, if you get that right, then you're listening well to the words of Kohelet, that is the preacher. We've looked at the monotony of life, the impermanence of life, the searching for and pursuing trivia, the time and life is unfair, the imbalance of life. We've looked at all these things. We've looked at the lulav and the etrog, the sukkah itself, and the purpose of the feast of the people of Israel. The purpose. What are we about? Why are we here? So that we own God? No. So that we represent God. So that if you who are watching today are Jewish, you've got a responsibility to bear good news to the people around you. And if you're not a Jew, if you're a Gentile, then you get in on this because somebody sacrificed 70 bulls for you way back when. You get in on this because Solomon prayed so that all the nations or peoples of the earth may know that he is God. That's what this is about for me. I wish you a joyful holiday, a joyful festival of tabernacles. Tomorrow night, we're going to have some people here in the sukkah. We're going to have dinner together. We'll have a baptism in the afternoon, not far from here. And that'll be a joy. 2 Jewish women are getting baptized, maybe one more, we'll see. And then we'll come back here and celebrate and eat together, a bring and share dinner. That'll be a joy. I wish you today all the joys of the Festival of Tabernacles. Shalom.